I'm Cass.
And I'm Lee.
And this is Cass Lee Productions.
So we're doing another convo today, and we're told you about how we have similar book tastes.
Yes.
So we wanted to show you, I guess, our difference in book tastes.
Our exact differences.
Yes, because
More
even
or
though
less.
we have great similarities to
Yes.
the books we like, we also have drastic differences at the same time to
Yeah.
what they are.
Yeah. We have a Venn diagram of Cass's, Lee's, and then Cass and Lee's.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then the middle part is a lot bigger than these two parts.
So true. So, one of the things is I won't read any book that's too dark unless it has a sense of humor in it, because those books are just too heavy for me. I feel they're heavy.
And for me, I absolutely love dark fantasy. Anything with murder, assassination, anything like that. Specifically fantasy. Not anything about an assassin with a rifle or sniper gun or whatever. I specifically want the,
Darkness in your fantasy.
yes, in fantasy. Specifically fantasy.
And I'm okay technically with some, okay, it depends really how dark this dark is.
Yeah.
Like, what for me, it's like, if it just has, its down parts, or what is it? It has, I guess, a mystery dark theme to it.
Mhm.
I'm fine with that because I love mysteries. Anything mystery, I will
Yeah.
read.
I don't really read mysteries. I remember as a kid, my mom loved Nancy Drew, right? And I remember as a kid, I was like, oh, I don't, share any book interests with my mom. Let's read Nancy Drew and see if I like it. I don't like it.
It's because she's a bit of a... It's just not the right time period for mysteries in my mind. I mean, yes, Nancy Drew is a great writer. It's just, I don't like anything that wasn't printed. I think anything that was 1950 and downwards, I kind of don't like as a book.
Nancy Drew was...
I don't know when it was published, but I know that for a fact most of the stuff I don't like is 1950s and downwards.
I'm actually the same with her. I prefer things that are written, more modernly because it's language that we understand better.
I mean, I still understand the language, but I think they try to make it, too poetic, and it still holds my
Yeah.
attention, but I just feel like it's political speaking, which isn't political speaking. It's just the different tone they had of speaking back then.
Yeah.
So I don't like anything past...
It doesn't hold my attention at all.
For me, it depends on what book it is, and yes, and they are books... those are the books I slowly read. Those are not the ones I binge.
Yeah. The books I binge tend to be the dark fantasy books.
I binge any fantasy or dragon book as long as they're not too much into the dark realm, as I mentioned before.
Mhm.
How to Train Your Dragon got a bit too dark for me, at least at the age I was. I don't know, it just got a little bit too much on the dark side. It's a lot more tolerable now. I also don't like dark revenge stories. I can do some revenge stories, at least in, I would say, manga style. I can tolerate some more of the revenge ones, but otherwise I can't. Revenge stories they are my thing, but they aren't. It depends on the darkness you're going to.
So for me, when I read How to Train Your Dragon, which I think we read about at the same age, I didn't even realize that it was getting dark. I was just oh, this is cool.
It was getting dark and scary undertones. Some of the dragons were even getting creepier. I mean, the
Yeah.
dragons had always been, at the second book, that's when they had started getting creepy, and then they just progressively got more and more and more and more creepy. Which I didn't mind, because it's most mythological things were creepy at that time. So that was this thing, is when the creepy dragons started actually fitting the atmosphere of the book, that I was like,
Yeah. I think the last book, it talks about this dragon with an extremely muscular tongue that tears the arms off of its victims.
Yeah, or how about those poisonous dragons that, I can't remember what it was. The shark dragons. The shark dragons were also terrifying.
I like sharks, so.
I mean, the shark dragons were cool, but they were not the friendly sharks.
Yeah.
They came in with warm currents and could totally mess you up. And then there was another one in the library the library book that were pretty freaky.
The dragon books.
Well, remember how Hiccup breaks into the library at one point in one of the books? I think it's like the third book, maybe fourth.
I don't remember that, no.
But he like breaks into one of the libraries and there's a dragon there that's pretty scary. There's also like an invisible dragon that is also pretty.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That one was kind of like, ooh! But,
I mean, it was cool, but it was also terrifying.
yes. But that leads us to our next differences in genre. She doesn't like horror. I do. I like horror in books. I don't really like horror TV shows or movies. If I'm watching them alone, I have to pause it frequently to like readjust my emotions, because else I'll get like too like, ah!
For me, it's like, I guess I will read horrors or thrillers, but I'm very, very, very specific about my taste when it comes to those books. Those are the books that sort of like, has to be on the edge of really funny and comedy, otherwise I can't read it.
Yeah.
Or what is it? It has to be more suspenseful and not horror-ish. I'm good with, so that's why thrillers are more fitting to me, because there's more suspense than anything else, and I can deal with suspense.
Yeah. I don't really like thrillers or mysteries, as we mentioned before, all that much. Mostly because I prefer like fantasy. Like, and a lot of those are based like in modern time. And
yeah, I would love to see like a mystery fantasy novel. I would love that.
I would read that.
I would read that. So if you guys have any suggestions for that, let us know.
Yeah.
But I've always loved mysteries. Mysteries have been my one consistent genre throughout my life, is mystery books.
What about fantasy?
Fantasy, actually not so much.
Really?
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
Oh.
Elaborate for the audience.
Well, like when I was younger, most of the kid books I read, they didn't have fantasy elements to them.
Oh, okay.
Is kind of what I meant.
Like picture books, or like when you first transitioned to chapter books?
When I like first transitioned to chapter books, I was actually more into animal books at the time, so that was nonfiction and like fictional, wasn't realistic fiction books. Anything that included an animal, I would read.
I feel like at that age,
that's normal though.
Everyone's into animal books, because I remember reading this like series in my child mind. I thought it was like 20 or 30 books long. It's probably not, but it's a really long series of this family that just kind of like takes in puppies and stuff. I really don't remember it. I was really young.
I was really into the Santa Paw series when I was younger. There was also one other one that was like an animal thing.
Yeah.
It was by the same author. She did a lot of different books. I think there was one that was kind of like supernatural, along mixed with a bit of history and realistic fiction that I really enjoyed. It was something like The Ghost Pony or something.
Ooh.
It was good because it was about how like horses used to be used in mines, like how horse ponies used to be. Then it kind of went into that. That was cool. That's all I really remember of the book. But I remember it was pretty cool. I remember reading and being like, oh, cool, kind of like the canaries, but the horses, and I love horses, so you know.
So our third differences is she is like okay with romance.
Yes, I'm generally. It depends on if it's racy romance. If it's racy romance, I can't really stand it. If it's just them being cute to each other, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, for me, it's like I'm okay with the main character having a love interest. I just don't want it to be the main focus of the story.
And honestly, I can't do it with books as much. I really prefer it to be a side thing in my books, romance.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't mind reading a manga or watching a movie that's romance.
Yeah,
that's okay with me.
I can't do romance movies.
It's because my mom loved them so much that I just adapted to love them, because otherwise I would have suffered.
The one rom-com that I love has several murders in it, because it's about two assassins. So, you know.
Yeah, it's like, sometimes if you get into the right genre of what you like, and you know, it's like I said, I'll read anything that's kind of dark as long as it's a mystery.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that.
Yeah, and I'll just read anything dark.
It's like, as long as it happens to cross over into a genre you really love, I don't mind reading it.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention was...
I think I'm also more into sci-fi and westerns than you are. Sorry, I just wanted to also put that there.
I'm very into sci-fi.
Okay, so it's just westerns.
But not westerns. I tried to read one and I just couldn't. It was one of my dad's, and the cover was really pretty, and I was like, ooh, I want to read this. I think I got like halfway through, and I was like, no.
I specifically only really like Louis L'Amour books. He's like the only Western reader I've read, and I love it. Okay, go ahead and say what you're going to say before I interrupted you.
So what I was going to say is, back on the topic of dark books, there was a series I read in high school that I'm going to do a book review on eventually, called the first book is called The Dance of Cloaks. I don't remember what the series name is, but it's by David Dalglish, and he is one of my favorite authors, and I tried to get Lee to read it, and she couldn't, because it's really, really dark.
Yeah.
But I can devour those books in a day, and I have before. I have 4 of them. The first 2 in 2 of his series that I've read, and they are just amazing. That's because I only typically buy books if I either want in my library because they're one of my favorite, future library, because they're one of my favorite books, or I think I'm going to reread them again. Because another one is a book review I've already done, that you would have seen by now if you follow us, called Wandla, and I have read that 5 times.
And I definitely am spinning out more into the dark genre of books, but it's still something I'm very specific with.
Yeah.
So anything I'm specific with, I always say it's not something I generally like.
Yeah.
Like, I'm willing to stick out usually through a slow story, but if it's a slow story, I take a lot longer to read the book. Like, a book that would generally take me maybe a week will take me a whole month because I'm actually putting off reading that book, and that's how I know I technically don't want it, but I'm still committed to see what's happening at the same time. So it's like, that's why it's like I count sometimes read 2 books at once, because it's like, this one's too slow, but this one's perfect.
Yeah, I'm actually currently reading 2 books because one of them is kind of slow, and then the other one I had been waiting for to come into the library for like 2 weeks to read it, and I was so excited to get it that I started it immediately when I got it, and I read the second book which was 450 pages in about 4 or 5 days, and I'm now in the 3rd book, and I'm 111 pages in. Don't ask me how I remember the numbers, but I've been reading it for 3 or 4 days, I believe. But I didn't read it at all yesterday.
Yeah, she's a pretty fast reader. I read like maybe a page per minute. It seems like you read a page like a page every 30 seconds.
I've actually timed myself. I do read a page per minute, but I spend a lot more time on it.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a good book, I will sit down and read it for 2 or 3 hours straight.
And I've actually been having trouble reading books lately, and I'm feeling kind of bad because Cassie lent me one of her books, and it's like I'm still only like 62 pages in, and it's like...
Yeah, and I'm on the 3rd book of the series already.
And the thing is, I read about a page per minute too if I'm understanding the content put in front of me and I'm really enjoying it. Then I can read like a page a minute. So it's like I am capable of finishing that one book in 4 hours, but it's been like 2 weeks and I'm still at the pages, and it's like, Lilu, you can read more than this. And my body's just like, no, let's like watch that TV show. It's like, but Cassie lent this to me. I have a limited time to read this. And it's like, hey, you'll read it later. You can finish it in a day. And it's like, I can finish it in a day, but what do I really want to? And your body's like, hey, you'll do it. And it's like, no, you won't. You're ADHD. Why are you like this, brain?
Yeah. Because for me...
Because I do like the book.
Yay.
So far.
I think, like, several days out of the 2 weeks, I've texted Lee, how far are you in the book? How far are you in the book? Because I really, really, really want to gush to her about it.
And I'm like trying to read it, and it's like I've only made 3 pages headway because of my life.
Yeah.
And my ADHD-ness.
But one of the things I do, like, for slower books is I
try to give goals for myself. Like, I was trying to read 120 yesterday. That was my goal. Mm-hmm. I read 3 pages.
Oh. My goal is typically 100 pages per day. And I did not make it yesterday, but every time I sit down to read the book, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read 100 pages today.
Or like, what is it, you read it slowly chapter by chapter, but I don't have enough time to read it chapter by chapter, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to like 100 pages, I'm going to try to really like 60. Like, I'm going to read an hour each day, and I should finish it with no problem at all. That's why it's like, I got to get to 120 today, and it's like, I did it, I got to like 53.
Yeah, it's okay. You still have time. Are there any other differences in our reading preferences that you can think of? 'Cause
You don't mind reading 1,000-page books?
Oh.
I have a bit issue with it. The first 1,000-page book I read was actually something called The Oracle, and it was 1,008 pages, and it took me the whole summer to read it, and I still haven't finished up the last 10 pages because I realized that it was part of another series I was actually reading, and it was spoiling at the ending of that book series. So I was oh no! So I stopped, and I was like, I need to finish that book series first before I read the last 10 pages.
I can't specifically think of any books right now that are 1,000 pages, but I did read this series. You might have heard of it. It became a Netflix show, maybe a year or 2 years ago, called The Outlander. And those books, it's an 8-book series, and each book is 600 to 800 pages.
Are the books definitely better?
The books are definitely better, mostly because, in my opinion, they're better because the show has a lot of nudity, and with the books, it's just kind of like you can skim over it or like be like, oh, that happened. But like with a TV show, you see like the bare skin, and it's just, oh, I'm good.
Yeah, my mom fast forwarded through a lot of The Outlander.
Yeah, but the books are definitely better, and I feel like the show probably focused on the more nudity parts of it than like the plot.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a more sexual show.
Yeah, and the books aren't really like that. From my memory, probably because I blacked out all of the sex scenes. Because we are both asexual.
Selective memories too.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
But my range of book pages I will read is like 300 is probably the shortest, because if it's 200, I feel like it might be more of a children's book, you know?
Or like novellas or like 100 pages. But I'll practically read anything as long as it's not 1,000 pages. Like I'll even read a 900-page book. It would still take me a while to read, but it's like I am willing to read it. But honestly, my cutoff is somewhere around 600 to 500 pages.
Yeah, my cutoff is probably 1,000 pages. I mean, honestly, if I like the book, I would read, something higher than that, but I highly doubt that there's many books that are past 1,000 pages. But I do want to say, it did take me a whole year to read that whole series, the Outlander series, and I do plan on buying it, specifically because there's a really, really nice set at a used bookstore, but I did see it 2 or 3 years ago, so it might not be there, but I want to look for that kind of set and buy it. Never gonna read it again because it took me a year, or I might if I have like a bunch of time, but there's always going to be new books, and it's just kind of like, I want to have it because it was a huge part of my life, a year of my life.
Yes. And
if I didn't like it, I would have just put it down. And that's actually one of the books I can remember more than like The Thief and the Queen of Atolia. I didn't really remember the plot until she mentioned them.
It's usually like, you start bringing stuff up, people start remembering. It's
Yeah.
just a thing. So I think that's it for that. I can think of the differences in our taste in reading.
I think so as well.
So we will see you back here with our convos, because we don't know if you like this, but
like and subscribe anyways, and we'll
see you next time. Signing off. Yay.